and we would find ourselves in shooting galleries in Harlem. We'd be the only white people in the room passing around. I knew I was very sick because I was all jaundiced. I ended up getting hepatitis C. And I said to Robin at the time, I said, Rob, I've lost 40 pounds in 3 months. I said, I'm dying. Look at me, I'm dying. My rib cage is exposed, the rings under my eyes. I can't continue this.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You are co-founder of the Robin Foundation, which we can see that you're branding behind you, and we're going to definitely talk about that before we part ways today. Person in long-term recovery, you're a Hep C survivor. You've also survived level 4 cirrhosis of the liver, and you have, and forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, dysphonia? Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yes,
Yeah.
you said
So
it. Most people don't.
Yeah. So anyone listening right now, you'll probably notice that there's something a little bit out of the ordinary with Chris's voice, and that's what that is. But you know, let's not let that stand in the way of having you share your story with us, man. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we jump in?
No, let's do it.
Let's hear it, man.
So, I grew up in Long Island, New York, and I had a great upbringing from the standpoint that I lived with my mom and my brother Stephen, who was 7 years older than me. It was an ideal situation. Had great friends. Was out on the playing stickball at night, riding bicycles up in the street. It just as you would think about the 50s, most that kind of suburbia was very similar.
Elvis and
But
drive-ins and French
yeah,
fries and
this is
poodle
it.
skirts, right? I wasn't there, but
I wasn't wearing them, but yes, that's true. But my mother started getting sick, and I wasn't sure because I was like 11 or 12 at the time. Um, and I'll never forget the night that she brought me into her bedroom and she said, I want you to know that I have multiple sclerosis and arthritis, and that's why I'm using these crutches. And within seconds of her telling me that, she fell backwards into the closet. And that was very traumatic for me to see that because again, telling an 11-year-old multiple sclerosis, that's meaningless to me. What she wasn't telling me is that she also had breast cancer. And so my father, realizing that my mother couldn't handle me as a young boy, uh, had me sent to a private school on Long Island. And I wasn't there 30 days, and a senior came into our room. I had a roommate, and from that night forward, I'm being raped.
every
Being
night.
raped. I'm being every night, and even to the point where, just to show you how villainous this person was, he would end up commanding us to have sex with each other while he
Wow.
sat there. Um, and then you'd have to go the next day in this communal to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And he would always position himself so he could see, us. My roommate's name was Richard, and I. And I lived with such fear. It was horrible. It was horrible. And the only breaks in this that I recall was at Christmas time or any time that the kids went home. So that was highly traumatic. At the same time, and soon after this, my mother died from the cancer primarily, and from there on, it was almost, I would go to a school every year or two, a different school, because I kept on getting thrown out because I didn't know how to communicate at that age what was happening to me. I was so traumatized that I was looking for ways to get thrown out of the school. I was always in fear that no matter what school I went to, that this person would show up. Three schools later, he reappeared,
Mm.
and there was no conversation, no interaction, um, and I almost blacked out during that time. I could not tell anyone what had happened,
Mm.
so I had to live with that terror, always being afraid of people.
Yeah.
So around this same time is when I started drinking. And I just at that point, it was more like I wanted to be a part of. I certainly didn't enjoy it. I did not enjoy it. Although every weekend, up to the point where I was with my mother, we would go to aunt and uncle's house, and the drinking was just completely out of control. Both grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, and eventually cousins. All I recall is that everyone was having a good time. So
Mm.
that was kind of the message that I was receiving. When I ended up in my, was a junior in high school, upstate New York, right near West Point, very picturesque. And a person uh, gave me I was up for 3 days. I thought I was the smartest guy. With all of these rambling thoughts, I began to, doing writings and things of that nature. It helped me athletically. I certainly was addicted thereafter.
Mm.
And meanwhile, no one in that school knew what I was doing, including my roommate Mark. I mean, I did, question it, but not I didn't question it enough to stop it or reject it or, it just felt good. So I thought this is something that I should be doing. So
Now, how old are
and
you at this
then
time?
so I'm 17 at this time,
Okay, so still pretty
and
young.
uh, I had no money on me, and I panhandled a ticket to Milwaukee. I'm there for a couple of weeks. My family doesn't know where I am, so I call my cousins on the my Irish side of the family who really were not part of the drinking side. They were just good, solid people. And they said, if you come home, you need help. And that was the first time someone really, said to me, I'm sure they talked about it, but someone said, listen, Chris, you need help and we want to help you. I want to
Mm.
send you a ticket and we're going to help you. They ended up sending me to a place called Miami State Psychiatric Institute. The TVs all were in cages. It was just like that movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. There was a time where the person would yell out medication, and the people would line up for their their cups of medication.
So, what did
But
you like? So, what was going through your head during this time?
yeah, I don't know that I was thinking anything about anything other than escaping. That was my whole thing, is that I wanted to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was really no way off that island. It was an island. So unless you could drive off with someone, which no one was coming to pick me up, um, you weren't getting off. But there was like a walk bridge. And one day, it was during the summer, I'd been there for some time. I walked away from the group with state greens on, Manhattan State Hospital, walk across the bridge. I was in East Harlem. There was a subway stop on 116th Street. I got in the subway. Of course, needless to say, people are looking at me. And by the time I got to the end of the subway trail, which is into Lower Manhattan, the police, they had already had an arrest warrant out for me. They picked me up and they put me back into another hospital. So and that's basically where it finally ended with the hospitals. But that was a 4.5 year run. I had that addiction still living in me. And was dealing, and it didn't last very long because I was set up by actually, he was a friend of my father's, who had a factory right next door to my father's building. His name was Eddie, and he had been busted with importing across the Mexican border. So he
Mm.
set me up with the DEA. And what's ironic was, is I said to the guy, to the guy, this new person I had never seen before, I said, if I didn't know better, I would say you were a cop, because he looked exactly like one of my Irish cop uncles.
Mm-hmm.
Laugh, you know. And of course, a month later, I ended up on Rikers Island. I had never been in jail before. I had never been in prison before. So, needless to say, this was deathly frightening to me.
Mm.
And the next morning, so I got there again late at night. I don't know why it's always at night, but the next morning, in the chow line, and a huge African American guy comes up behind me and he says, "You're going to be my bitch." Again, now I'm flashing back to what happened to me as an 11, 12-year old. And I said, this can't happen. So I started screaming. So they put me in isolation. And my brother, thank God, was able to bail me out the next day.
Then what?
The night of my arrest, before I went to Rikers Island, the DEA said, you have a choice. If you work for us, I know that we could reduce your time. We're not going to guarantee you that you'll get off. Um, but, if you do this right, we can help you. So, in essence, I'd have to find dealers that I could set up. I always wanted to be a cop. But of course, that was out the window once I was arrested. After getting arrested and everything, I went down to Florida and I met who my future wife, Robin. Um, Within 24 hours, she and I are together doing. And during this time, I was going back to New York to do these cases, these setups. And finally, it was time for my court date. The DEA spoke so eloquently about my participation with many of the cases that I had brought to them, that they suggested to the district attorney that I be given lifetime probation. You have to understand, every couple of weeks, I'd have to go to the DEA quarters. The whole
Mm-hmm.
time I was using when I was working for them. And so Robin and I, we find a place. So I get the lifetime probation. We move out to Long Island, which is about 40 miles outside of the city, and we start dealing in a town called Bayville, Long Island. And I say this because it's like a mafia stronghold. It's
Mm.
right on the water, and a lot of wealthy people. We of course had a rental in a house, um, and one of the people that I had set up came from that town, was a connected guy. Um, and that's when the DEA said to me, "Listen, you need to leave." And they said to me, "Would you like us to put you in the witness protection program?" Explain it to me. Well, what's that all about? No, that's not for me. I'll just move to back to Florida with Robin. 3 days after that conversation, we were going to go to Florida to get clean, to
Mm-hmm.
get find whatever this recovery thing is. And Robin ended up, she was with a guy who the DEA had been following, and she gets busted. Okay. So it's like, oh my God. So I went back to the DA. I said, listen, I'll work off her case. You let me work off her case. I'll get you whatever, she needs. And that's what we did. And it basically kept her out of jail. During our using, we would find ourselves in shooting galleries in Harlem. And it wasn't, I knew I was very sick because I was all jaundiced. But I did not realize, nor did anyone else realize, I ended up getting hepatitis C. Um, and I said to Robin at the time, I said, Rob, I've lost 40 pounds in 3 months. I said, I'm dying. Look at me. I'm dying. My rib cage is exposed, rings under my eyes. I can't continue this. And that was July 4th. We went to bed. We woke up on July the 6th, and July 6th, 1984, we went into treatment.
Saskatoon's own Heroic Microgreens understands the value of nutrition in mental health, recovery, and coming together in challenging times to ensure everyone has access to nutritious food. And as such, we'd like to thank A1 Accounting Group for their generous contribution to our monthly food bank donation. Would you like to pitch into our monthly donation pool? Shoot me a message through the email in the show notes below. All right, EHN Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based, medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering from substance use disorder. In Saskatchewan, their care is 100% supported by Saskatchewan Health. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Wellness News, Choice for Healthy Living, is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals, locally allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. If you'd like to see our content uncensored, we are now offering channel memberships. There is a lot of things we can't show you without getting restricted, so if you want the full conversation, or to check out our merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below.
In and out of hospitals, in and out of biopsies. And of course, then the cirrhosis starts to develop. Um, and they wanted to put me on a transplant list. I certainly didn't want to do a transplant. I just, but when you get to like stage 4, level 4 cirrhosis of the liver, you don't have a lot of time left. Something needs to happen. Um, Fortunately, in South Florida, there's a huge community of recovering addicts with Hep C. And I had twin daughters, and I felt that the end was inevitable. And I went into a huge depression. And that was part of when I was taking the interferon, that's one of the side effects, depression. So I had to take a lot of different medications just to deal with the side effects. Yeah, I accepted the fact. I mean, I didn't say it to my kids, and I didn't really say it to Robin, but she knew, and we just didn't want to talk about it. It was sort of like the elephant in the room, and also recovery played a huge part on my being able to accept things emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. And within 3 or 4 years, they found this particular drug, which escapes me. It's a protocol now that it's worldwide, and that's what most of us that have this hepatitis C virus usually end up doing. And that's what saved my life. And our community, as I said, was full of addicts just like me. So I couldn't be going around saying poor me too much when I would be in meetings and people would come up. And that sort of gave me life too, that I could go share my experience, strength, and hope about hepatitis C. And I would get calls all the time. What should I do? Where should I go? Have you felt this? So I became almost like the nucleus for our community of some of the places they go, make appointments for them at certain clinics and doctors. So it became inspiring. So it did almost like a 360. Um,
So did
yeah,
you feel ripped
yeah.
off? Like, I went to all of this trouble to get sober, and now this is happening anyways.
No, I felt shame on you. Look
Mm,
what you did. Look where you spent your time. Um, yeah, I didn't feel good about myself at all. But again, if it wasn't for 12 steps, a
mm-hmm,
sponsor, and what was being offered, from that way, and
mm-hmm,
also uh, anti-depression medicine, which I couldn't talk about. That's
mm-hmm,
interesting.
mm-hmm,
Every fellowship with NA, at least down here, any substance you're not supposed to be taking. You know, So I couldn't even really talk about that in meetings, but I
Mhm.
needed it. I had to in order to, to be able to walk around, to work, so
So what did recovery, I mean, you've already talked a little bit about it, but like when you entered recovery, like did you buy in right away? Like did you go run into the rooms or did you white knuckle it
no,
or
no,
like what did that look like?
no. So we tried without going into a hospital together to a 28-day program. Prior to that, we tried going to an NA meeting. So we sat out in the parking lot for 45 minutes drinking before we went into the meeting. We both picked up white chips, and when we left, we continued drinking on the way home, where we had daughters
Mm,
waiting for us. But finally, when I said to Robin, "Look at me, I'm emaciated, I'm dying. We can't continue like this." That's when we finally went into the last 28-day program, and our
mm,
girls were presented to us. They were 5 at this point, and again, the shame and the guilt was pretty powerful. And part of that motivated us. Some of that guilt and shame actually motivated us to do more, to do better.
hmm.
Um,
The gift of desperation, man.
so we were fully involved in the service structure of Narcotics Anonymous. That's what really changed my life, and that's what really encouraged me to do more in my
Mm,
community, was being committed to service. Um, so that's what happened, and Robin and I, at the time, had a we started a small investigative business. Been a private investigator for 40 years, and the girls were getting to the age 9 or 10 where someone needed to be home. Um, so I told her, I said, "Listen," I said, "I have a great idea," which was actually I had gotten from a company I had been working with, a security company, to do background investigations, which in Florida it is like Southern California, very very transient, and everyone wanted to know, the background on someone before they hired them. Long story short, we started this background business in one of our daughter's bedrooms and became a huge financial success. And we started hiring all the people in the program. It looked like a large convention. We had like 150 people. Then we had offices around the country. And it became very big, very successful. And Robin and I were doing great together. The girls were doing good. Um, and we decided to 10 years later fast track. We sold the business thinking we're never gonna to work again. We're never gonna, we're just gonna travel and do, what people do when they do well. And Robin, a year after we sold the business, she had to have a surgery. And the surgery uh, required pain medicine, and she felt that she could take the pain medicine. That, why should she be in pain? She can handle it. She was You could see she was changed. It was off to the races.
mm,
Um, and finally, I said to her, "Listen, Rob, I can't do this because now I'm wanting to use. This is not good. Now the girls are teenagers, you know." So she went to a place in St. Kitts, and she met a therapist who was unlicensed, which we didn't know at the time. It was the month before 9/11. So when 9/11 struck, no one could travel, whether you're in Canada or US. I mean, everything was locked down. So finally, when she did get home, she was living in a separate apartment because, as I said, I wasn't comfortable. I thought the marriage was ending at that point. Um, and she called me up. This was just around Christmas of 2000 or 2001, excuse me. And she said, listen, the therapist that tried to help me, and how they were helping people, by the way, was with a psychedelic drug called. And so he moved into her apartment and he told her that I know it didn't work out for you with the game, but I can give you something similar. And what he gave her was X, and it had ephedrine in it. She ended up having a massive stroke, overdosed, and died.
Mm.
Um, so that was traumatic for everyone, not just for me, for the girls, her ex-employees. I mean, her community. It was devastating. I try to encourage my girls, twins. Chrissy at the time was a junior in college and studying to be an addictionologist, a harm reduction specialist. She ended up getting it. I said, Stephanie, go with your sister back to Tampa because Stephanie was living with me alone at the time and she wouldn't go. Um, and that was the beginning of the end for Stephanie. For the next 18 years, and it was Robin's death that she just started spiraling out of control, in and out of jail. Chrissy was doing very well with her career. So you've got one child that's doing very, very well uh, in the area of interest of what we've been involved in from a recovering standpoint, and her
Mhm.
twin that's totally bonkers, on drugs, stealing, thieving, um, homeless for an extended period of time, in and out of jail constantly. And she did that for 18 years.
Mhm.
But just to segue properly, 2 years after Robin's death, the three of us, Chrissy, Stephanie, and I, started the Robin Foundation. That's really when the foundation was started. And I thought, I was a good businessman, knew nothing about a nonprofit. And I thought that I had to pay for people to go into treatment, pay for detox, because I was flush with cash, but I felt like it was blood money because Robin wasn't there to enjoy it with me. So I
Mhm.
couldn't spend it fast enough. I just couldn't. I ended up having to file bankruptcy multiple times. Um, so it was a real wake up call. I went from having boats and houses on the water to like a rental property.
Something we haven't talked about is your healing journey from the sexual abuse.
In my fifth year of recovery, I ended up transferring that what happened to me into a sexual addiction. I
Mm.
would have women all over the country, um, and I would fly to them or fly them to somewhere to meet me. Um, and this was at the height of our business doing well. And fortunately, Robin caught me.
Mhm.
And with that, she and I, for the next 2 years, were in therapy, marriage counseling. I was going to a different fellowship to deal with this sexual addiction, um, and seeing a therapist. So I was like recommitting, my life to recovery. So my recovery has not been consistent from that standpoint, is that, yeah, I was recovering, but I was leaving a full block of my life that I wasn't dealing with. It just wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't think that I was in all that. I thought I dealt with it, it was over. I told my family that's it. But the reality is that I had never dealt with it. And it was only because of being caught that my life was able to not only change, but to heal and move on. Does
Mm.
that mean to this day that I'm fully over? No, I don't think it's something you ever, get over.
Mhm.
You get yourself to a place where you can accept yourself, not feel the shame and the guilt, and that was heavy stuff. That was really probably the most difficult part of my recovery, was owning up to what I had done, um, and the reason why I was doing it. So
Mm. So what did
that's the
that look
story.
like then? So you're working with therapists and you're going to a different fellowship, incorporating the 12 steps, I'm sure, into that leg of your recovery. Were there any moments and that where the rubber hit the road for you in that? Like, do you remember maybe something you heard or a realization you had that really helped you come to terms with the abuses that you've endured?
I just knew that it was life saving and life changing.
Mm,
And that if I was planning on staying with my wife and my daughter, that I had to continue in this path. And you know what? Our marriage was very strong
mm.
if during that period. So, but I'm glad that it's over with.
Yeah.
Stephanie became my focus after Robin's overdose.
Hmm.
Um, so when I say that she was in and out of jail, that she was sleeping under a bridge right here in town, um, she was being trafficked by some guy that she came across, having her, constantly stealing things and just running her basically. And that was part of not just my life, but Chrissy's life too, because the three of us obviously were very, very tight after we lost Robin, because we lost her together.
Hmm.
And now we're going through something with Stephanie that Robin and I had been through using, um, and the fear of losing her was always in my chest, um, and I always knew that we were going to lose her. We just didn't know when. We certainly felt we knew how. Um, but Chrissy and I worked very hard at trying to keep her alive and motivate her. And Chrissy was so, so good with her. She brought her to her place of work, and Stephanie started having a program, a real program. Um, she went to one time after coming out of jail for whatever she was incarcerated for. Um, she went to a halfway house, and that was life changing. So I only for a minute did I begin to feel hope that maybe this really will be something. And Stephanie ended up having a son, my grandson Christopher, and eventually she had a daughter, Mia Robin is what we call her. Uh, but she was born addicted. Mia was born addicted to Stephanie, and uh, Stephanie was smart enough to say to Chrissy, "You need to take her. I can't do this." So Chrissy adopted her at her bedside, so social services wouldn't take her away, because they were standing in the hallway, and that's what they were prepared to do.
Hmm.
So it was the smartest decision that the two of them made together. Um, so to fast track it, they never, I felt, gave Karen, my wife, the respect that I believe she deserves. And because, if that, it caused a lot of animosity in the dynamics of our relationship. And um, Karen and I decided we're going to take a vacation. We're going to take a cruise. Our family likes to take cruises. I had such a fear to go away on that trip, because it was really the first time where I would be away from Stephanie, not just geographically, but there was something about leaving at that time that I didn't feel good about. Being a private investigator, I've got a house full of trackers. I put a tracker on her car, get on the ship, leave. 3 days later, I see that her tracker has her in neighborhoods that's all drug infested. So I said, "This is not good." And she had been recovery for 9 months at this point. So I told Chrissy, I said, listen, I see her now. She's in a hotel. And I look at my phone, and Stephanie had been trying to text me the night before. I can't do this anymore. I just want to die. She's dead the next morning.
Mm.
Um, so that's everything changed when that happened. Everything changed, and the commitment to the Robin Foundation really escalated because of Stephanie's death. So I really feel like we owe Stephanie a big depth of gratitude because that her passing, her overdose, was the impetus that drove us to do the things that we're doing today, which I think is pretty powerful in our community, at least.
Yeah. So what are you doing in the community?
We contacted the Florida Department of Children and Family Services, which were looking for organizations like ours to distribute Narcan. So I said, well, geez, I can do that. So I did a training program with them. And I came back, I said to Chrissy, I said, not only are we going to pass out Narcan, but we're also going to do training because at one time I was a trainer. So I said, I can do this. We can train people. We can't just pass out Narcan and expect that the world's going to change. I
Mm-hmm.
said, it's a life saving medication, but clearly that's not the answer either um, as far as long term success. So, so that's what we've been doing since Stephanie died in 2019, so 2020. So we go around, we speak to organizations, we try to convince people that are either using or not using, those that are coming out of the system about what we've been through, and trying to change, the overdose fatality. We were number 2 in the country for overdose fatality back in 2020. Last year, we were number 2 in the United States for the largest decrease of overdose fatalities by 24%.
Wow.
So we're obviously doing something. So people now, other governments, other not for are coming down here to see what we're doing. So it's not just the Robin Foundation; it's a lot of different organizations that do this work, not just here in the United States, but in your neck of the woods as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to continue for sure. But the long term goal of this foundation is to create a residential recovery community for women and children because
Mm-hmm.
those are the most underserved in our community.
So
Okay.
I'll put a link in the show notes, but just in case people are wondering, where can people find you? Where can people reach out and either contribute or volunteer or help in whatever way is meaningful to them?
robinfoundation.org. There's forms you can fill out if you need Narcan. If we can't get it here in Florida and somewhere else in the states, we can direct you. But we're always looking for volunteers, always
Mhm.
looking for volunteers because that's the only way to sustain ourselves.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Chris.
Yeah.
You've had a pretty wild journey throughout your life, and it's such a breath of fresh air to see it turned around, and you having the willingness to share openly with us. Thanks so much, and we'll cap it there. Take good care, my friend.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Say, this is Hard Knox Talks.